Hi everybody, my name is Brianna Olson and this is my video presentation for my teacher work sample that I did for this field experience course. So just to kind of get started, we're going to jump right into the contextual factors. I'm not going to go through all of these just to save some time here, but I am going to talk to you about some of the ones that I really had to take into consideration for teaching this unit. So in the class that I am student teaching in and did my field experience in, we have 5 students who are receiving reading support in the special education or Title I classroom. And then I also have 2 students that are in the special education classroom for math. So I just really had to make sure to differentiate and accommodate for these students and make sure that they got the support that they needed throughout this unit. Really keeping them in mind was important when I developed my lessons. Another thing that I really had to consider was that there was no classroom computers. There's a cart of iPads that's shared throughout the 3rd grade, and they rotate day to day. So just when I was planning my lessons, if I needed technology, I needed to make sure that I scheduled those lessons or portions of those lessons on the days that the iPads were available to us. So it was just more of a scheduling thing and making sure that we stayed on track if we needed the technology throughout the unit. My mentor teacher also has a behavior system in place that uses color cards. It's a stoplight technique, so green is you're good to go, yellow is you're on warning, and red means you lose your recess and you're doing a refocus. So that's refocus is a system that's put in place by the school. So just using that with consistency really helped classroom management, and being able to model how my mentor teacher used that was really important. So just some high leverage and evidence-based practices that I was able to observe from my mentor teacher and then put into play during this unit that I felt were really important was checking for understanding throughout each lesson. My mentor teacher does this in a variety of ways, and just seeing how she implements this practice into her lessons every day was really beneficial to me. Specifying and reinforcing productive student behavior. Just using that behavior system consistently just totally completely improved the classroom management. So that also played into setting up and managing small group work. So I hadn't done a lot of work with small groups, and I utilized small groups a lot for a huge portion of this lesson. So that was really important. And then implementing norms and routines in the classroom. So we kind of had a routine almost every day throughout this unit. Not that we were doing the same thing, but we got to make models and things like that, and just, you know, the students knew what was expected of them, and working in groups and things like that. So just setting up that routine and those norms were really important, especially as me coming in as an outside teacher that wasn't their normal teacher. That was pretty important. So moving on to objectives and standards. So I did my TWS unit in a 3rd grade classroom here in Salmon, Idaho, and I did a weather and data unit. So the description here is students will learn how to measure and predict weather conditions through various lessons that focused on meteorologist tools, how to use them, and their importance in predicting weather. So they got to learn all about what being a meteorologist means and the tools that they use and how to predict weather. There were 2 standards that correlated with this unit. The first one was representing data in tables and graphical displays to describe typical weather conditions. So students were able to take the data that we collected, they graphed temperatures and cloud types, things like that, precipitation, and so that's where the data and graphical displays came into place. And then the overall standard that encompassed the majority of the unit was just the weather and climate standard, which is where scientists record patterns of weather across different times and areas so that they can make predictions about what kind of weather might happen next. So students were able to use the tools that they learned about to help them make their own weather predictions. So I'm just going to jump right into our lessons that I did. So I did 6 lessons for this weather unit. You'll see some examples of student work throughout here. They learned a lot about meteorologist tools, and we actually made models of them, and so a lot of this unit was hands-on, which was really engaging for the students and made it really fun. So for the first lesson, students learned about meteorologists, what they do, who they are, and then they began learning about what tools they use to collect the data and predict weather patterns. So after we did that, we just talked about the importance of predicting weather and how it affects people in our area, and maybe if you're traveling and things like that, and why it's important for us to get the weather on the news. And then we jumped right in and started learning about wind vanes. So wind vanes determine the direction of wind. And down here at the bottom, right here, you'll see that students got to make their own replica of a wind vane. And I did split the class into 5 meteorologist groups, and they stayed in those groups for the duration of the unit. And so each group made a wind vane, went outside, determined the wind direction, and then collected the data in their data notebooks. So for the second lesson, we learned about anemometers, which is this tool up here. So the ones that we made actually didn't work very well. It was good for them to make a model and be able to visualize it, but when we went outside to collect data, it wasn't very effective. Thankfully, our school had one outside, so they were able to see an actual anemometer and how it works, and then use it to help them determine the wind speed. For our third lesson, students learned about thermometers and how they worked. So this is one where we didn't make a model, but we did a fun little experiment with heat and expansion and how the red dye works within the thermometers. And then we did a little activity where they practiced reading thermometers as well. And for the fourth lesson, students learned about the types of clouds and what they mean in terms of weather. So this is really where they got into the prediction part of the standard. So they were able to identify the different types of clouds. I taught them 4 different types of clouds and then what they mean in terms of weather. And they were able to predict what weather they thought was going to happen in the afternoon, depending on the clouds that they saw outside. So that one was really fun for them in the predicting portion of the unit. For the 5th lesson, students learned about severe weather that happens around the world. So they learned about different types of severe weather in our area, in our state, in our country, and then, like I said, all around the world. And this is where we utilize the technology portion. So each meteorologist group got assigned a different type of severe weather, and they kind of had to give a mini presentation on that after they did some research on the iPads. And this was really fun for them, and they did really good with their presentations. So I was really happy with how that lesson went. And then for our final lesson, the students concluded their investigation of weather and becoming meteorologists, and they did so by presenting a final weather broadcast for Salmon, Idaho. So I had the students do a 10-day broadcast with their meteorologist groups. So they were in charge of finding the weather for 10 days and then using that to predict the next 2 days. So overall they did 12 days, and they were able to make predictions. They had to have visuals, and they had to develop a script as well to come up with their news broadcast. And it was broadcast just like you would see it on TV. And I was really happy with how this wrapped up the unit and how well the students worked together. And I overall think that it was really fun for the students, and it was great to see the creative side be able to come out as well. So I'll just jump right in here to assessments. So this one here is the pre and post assessment. I use different types of questioning. There's matching, labeling, short answer, and then an essay as well. So this just kind of went over some of the tools and different types of clouds, and then short essay they had to actually write and put their ideas on paper. So as far as some of the formative assessments that I used for my lessons, a lot of it came into play with this right here. This was their data collecting paper that they had in their data notebooks. And so unfortunately for this week that we chose to do, a Monday ended up being a snow day, so they only got to record the weather for 3 days instead of 4, unfortunately. But they got to collect data on cloud cover, different types of clouds, precipitation, wind speed and wind direction, as well as the temperature. So that was kind of how it accumulated throughout the lesson. They would fill this in, throughout the unit. So then we'll look at the pre and post assessment scores. So I was really concerned with my pre-assessment scores. They seemed really low to me, and I was really worried about how much differentiation I would have to do to accommodate that for my students. But once we got going, the students really caught on and they really rocked and rolled with this unit. And as you can see, the post-assessment scores were very satisfactory. I was really happy with how this unit played out. So we'll look at some of the scores here. So for my pre-assessment, their overall mean was 37%, which, like I said, was really concerning to me. I had no students in the proficient group. I had 17 students in the pre-instructional group and only 3 in the instructional group. So I was really concerned with having the majority of my students in the pre-instructional group. But like I said, once we got rocking and rolling with this unit, the students really, kept moving along and did really well, and no one really struggled throughout this unit, so that was good. As far as post-assessment scores, their class mean jumped to 89%, which gave me a gain score of 52%. Very happy with that. Students really gained a lot from this unit. Like I said, I didn't have anything in the proficient subgroup. My instructional subgroup went up 26% and pre-instructional went up 55%. So all good things that I saw there. And just to kind of reflect a little bit on this unit, first I just want to say that me and my students all had so much fun with this unit. It was really hands-on, it was really engaging, they learned a lot, and they had fun, which is so important. And some really good strategies that I used with the help of my mentor teacher was really scaffolding, building on the prior knowledge that they had, and just presenting stuff piece by piece and building upon stuff every day, doing a review every day and stuff like that. That really helped my students out a lot. When we were making the various meteorologist tools, modeling was very important, especially for some of my students that were lower in the pre-instructional group. They really needed to see it be done to be able to do it themselves, so that was important. And then the small group work, like I said, I utilized meteorologist groups throughout the whole unit, and I thought it was so beneficial. The students were learning from each other. I was able to check for understanding much easier, and I just felt like it was really, really effective for this particular unit. And then my least effective strategy, some of the resources that I used were from my mentor teacher that she had used the previous year, and it focused more on whole group direct instruction, and that just didn't work for me and the students. They were checking out, they weren't engaged, and after the first day, I just decided that wasn't going to work for us and this unit, and so we didn't do direct instruction as much, and I thought that helped. So some professional development that I learned I could use throughout this unit, I got the opportunity to be observed while I was teaching one of my TWS lessons. And the biggest feedback that I got was just allowing for wait time. So letting those students process their thoughts and develop an answer was really important, because I know that sometimes it's hard to sit there in the awkward silence and let them think. And so I just was like, well, we can just move on, and I would provide the answers for them, and we kept going. But it definitely was a good thing that it was brought to my attention to just allow those students a little bit more time to come up with ideas and be able to give their input. So, and then I learned a lot through working with the small groups and my classroom management. It's different than working with the whole group, and strategies are different when you're working with small groups. So just kind of learning through that, and like I said, with the help of my mentor teacher, I thought it went really well. And then just some different differentiation techniques. I think that's something that all teachers can always improve on. So just some things that I need to keep in mind, if I were to teach this again. So future actions for success. If I was going to teach this unit again, I really think that I would try to incorporate more technology. The one day that we did do the severe weather, I thought that it went really well. They were really good at researching and finding their own resources and coming up with their own presentations and things like that. I thought that it went really well, and they were really engaged. So I wish that I could have been able to do that more, and maybe exploring how to do that and what different portions of the lesson that could have been done would be beneficial for this unit. And then, like I said, I had a lot of kids that could have probably been in the proficient subgroup, and I didn't really plan on that much enrichment, since the pre-assessment told me that I didn't have a lot of those students in that area. So I needed to provide more enrichment, and having those resources ready would have been more beneficial for me and the students, as well as, like I said earlier, more differentiation. Just having various ways to connect with the students, meet them at their level, and make sure they're not falling behind. But overall, this unit was so much fun. I had a great time with my students. We had lots of hands-on activities. It was really engaging. And I couldn't be more happier with how this unit played out. So thanks for watching with me, and if you ever have a third grade classroom, I really encourage you to do a weather and data unit because we did have so much fun. Thanks.